Today on episode 113 of Rail Talk, Dale Romans is running for Senate, and we react to the Claiming Crown, one of our favorite events, and all of the breaking news and controversies in racing. I'm Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds, and hold on a second. Clean my glasses right here. I know that ain't who I think it is. Jon Green is back from sabbatical. Welcome back, buddy.
Thanks, man. Jonathan Green, general manager of DJ Stable. Joe, it's been almost a month since my trials and tribulations out to California and Kentucky, and then I was under the weather for a little bit, but I actually got on the pre-show a couple minutes early because I had to, check my equipment, and then I had to turn the computer on.
The opinions expressed on Rail Talk are those of hosts Joe Bianca and Jon Green and do not reflect those of anybody we work with or work for. Rail Talk is sponsored by TaylorMade. Shout out to the TaylorMade team coming off the heels of another spectacular November sales season. Obviously, great success on the racetrack with medallion racing that we mentioned earlier. But I want to hear from Jon again. Jon, you obviously had your strategic reduction going through the TaylorMade consignment. How was your experience?
Well, it couldn't have been better, Joe. I mean, they poured so many resources into making sure that that our horses were focused on and highlighted. They set up our own barn for the reduction, and we had our own handlers of the horses that were branded in DJ Stable jackets, and they had a soup and sandwich truck that was there, and every time you got a sandwich, it had a DJ Stable napkin on it, and the soup was in the DJ Stable mugs. I mean, just little details like that didn't go unnoticed by me and by the buyers. Is that the reason why we sold so well? No, but is it a reason that makes TaylorMade stand out in comparison to the other consigners? Abso-freaking-lutely. And like I said, we were 32 for 32, Joe. I mean, that is unheard of in the course of selling horses. And thanks again to Mark Taylor and the head of sales Jeff Hazlett for being involved with me since April when we put together the plan and the program, and it went off without a hitch. And I just couldn't be happier, and can't say enough about TaylorMade and my relationship with the whole team there.
Yeah, well, if you're a buyer or a seller, their consignment should be your first stop at any of these major sales you go to. And I'm really happy for you guys. And, I'm just glad you got the results that you did. And, it takes a team, and having the TaylorMade team behind you and Len, really, it's a match made in heaven, and, some of the best people in the business. So shout out to you guys, and shout out to everybody at TaylorMade for a phenomenal year in the sales front, stallion barn, racing, all of it. Okay, so as I mentioned in the open, it's been a couple of weeks since your faithful hosts have been together on this show since before the Breeders' Cup, which seems like years ago at this point. I won a Breeders' Cup race. Jon ran second in a Breeders' Cup race, sold a bunch of horses down at Kentucky. So, Jon, I'm going to toss it over to you. Tell us about your trips. Tell us about all the experiences, all the things you saw, all the foods you ate, all the controversy you stirred up. How was your time off, bud?
Joe, it seems like it's been a long time, and yet a whirlwind all at the same time, if that conundrum can actually work in this modern universe. But no, the Breeders' Cup was phenomenal. I thought that Del Mar did a wonderful job. I mean, the weather was perfect. The racetrack was perfect. There was some controversy, I guess, on the fact that it was really expensive to get in, which I agree with. There was more controversy on some horses that got scratched, before they got to enter the gate even. And I had a long conversation with Dr. Balia on, what the protocol is. We can get into a little bit later. But overall, Joe, the Breeders' Cup experience was absolutely phenomenal. Obviously, Nitrogen ran second, and I think has pretty much cemented her position as the favorite going into the Eclipse Awards for the 3-year-old fillies. A big tip of the cap to you guys for Super Corredora. I know you talked about that in great length, and rightfully so, because it ain't easy winning any kind of a Breeders' Cup race. let alone a baby race where you don't know from race to race how they're going to respond and if they're going to take that next leap up. And I think we're going to be sitting, if not next to each other at the Eclipse Awards, certainly, near each other, because I got to believe that Super Corredora has cemented her position as the leader for the 2-year-old filly division. There has not been a 2-year-old filly champion that hasn't won the Breeders' Cup, I believe, this century. So in the past 25 years, I know there's some there's a couple of contenders on there, like there always are, but we can talk about that a little bit later as well. And then, Joe, we went literally from the beautiful confines of Del Mar and San Diego down to the beautiful confines of Lexington, and for the beginning of the DJ Stable reduction. And that's in horses, not in pounds, as people can see who are watching the video right now. And the main thing was to try to get 33 horses in the ring and sold. And unfortunately, at first blush with Vixen, we did not get the response that we had wanted, which is actually kind of a silver lining, because we are going to campaign her with our partners as a 4-year-old. So we're doing a little work on her ankle, and she will be ready to go, come March or April of her 4-year-old year, and hopefully starting that campaign as well. But then, Joe, we had 32 horses at the Keeneland sale, and it was not a surprise based on the marketing and all of the work that TaylorMade did to try to promote all 32 horses. But Joe, every single one of them went into the ring. Every single one of them got sold, and sold for more than what we anticipated. They ran through the reserves that we had put on each horse. And what I was surprised about, and this goes to the strength of the buying market right now, Joe, is that all 32 horses went to different end user buyers. So there was never a double up. I mean, that's how deep the bench was of buyers at that sale, at the whole week, whether it was Fasig or Keeneland. And two of our horses are going to Japan. One is going to Australia. And then the remainder are going to be scattered around central Kentucky, and I think 1 or 2 in Florida as well. But it was just a phenomenal week, a whirlwind of a tour, if you will. I don't think you and I even got a chance to talk, other than just a text, congratulating each other on how well the horses did, our respective cares did at the Breeders' Cup. But it was a whirlwind. It was enjoyable. There was a lot of emotions. A couple of horses that we sold, we had in our program for like over a decade. And Mo Green in particular, we bought her as a yearling. We campaigned her on the races. We bred her a number of times, and even had one of her other daughters in our breeding program, Hop Henny, who also sold. But I couldn't be more pleased with the way that everything worked out for us, and just an upswing for the overall general industry, I think, if I can put a bow on it all. I think that we're kind of past that point of no return that we were heading towards, and things are on the upswing, Joe.
What was the point of no return?
I think that we had lost our social license as an industry, and that we had breakdowns, and people were questioning about the humanity of the industry, and the guardrails hadn't been on for a long time, and basically we were running ourselves into extinction in my estimation.
Don't tell that to all the dorks on racing Twitter who still think Paco Lopez being suspended is the greatest outrage in the history of horse racing, a guy who smacked a horse in the face for no reason. But I digress. Yeah, I mean, the sales results, if you're going by those, are, the industry's in good health. But, I wonder, like, how much of that is a bump from the tax law. And I hope that it's sustainable long term. And the other thing, too, is like, obviously the sales results were great across the board, across the sales. I still think that Mike Rapoli is onto something, that, aftercare shouldn't even be an issue at this point with all of the money that's changing hands at the sales. And, you still see a lot of stories on social media of horses who end up in kill pens, and, horses who are in bad spots, and trying to raise the money to buy them or to feed them. So, I don't want to be Debbie Downer, but it's part of me in the back of my mind when I see these like mind blowing sales results is like, well, how come we can't afford to house our horses after they're done racing if all this money is flowing around in the business? So I think that's something just to keep in mind. Going back to what you said about the Eclipse Awards. You mentioned how TaylorMade is so great at marketing your horses, and shout out to the homies at TaylorMade. They're going to put on a full court press, I think, for Sci-Fair to win champion 2-year-old filly, and Medallion Racing obviously is involved with that horse. And I'm not here to dump on her at all. She's had a very nice year, and was obviously much the best in her Breeders' Cup race. She has 3 wins, excuse me. So she has that on her resume. She did beat the boys at the Woodbine Stake. The only thing I'll say is, like, I don't think anybody who has a nice 2-year-old filly wakes up in the morning in like April or May is like, well, I can't wait to run in that turf sprint. I can't wait to run in the juvenile turf sprint. I think that if you have a really nice filly, the goal is to get him to go 2 turns and to get him to run in the juvenile fillies. And Super Corredora did that. And she held off all comers. She went fast early, held off a highly regarded Bob Baffert horse. So I'm not saying that the Sci-Fair doesn't have a case. I just think, the competition is a step below in the juvenile turf sprint. Because even in the Euros, like if you had a really nice Euro, you're going to run in the juvenile fillies turf. The turf sprint is kind of an afterthought for a lot of people. And again, not to dump on her, because she's very, very nice, has had a really good year. Reagan Swinbank is a friend of the show. But I think everybody in the world that has a good 2-year-old filly in the spring or summer is pointing to the race that we won. And, she stepped up off a blowout maiden win and, took on all comers and did it. She also ran second to Bottle of Rouge, who was a grade 1 winner in her race at Del Mar over the summer. So I think that it's not as if she was a 90-1 shot and she was a maiden and she had gotten beaten in all her races. She was a horse that a lot of people liked going into that race for good reason. Super visually impressive in her maiden win. And I think that it's a more important race historically. And I think that ultimately she's going to win, but I think it's close. And I think there is a case to be made for Sci-Fair. But, obviously I'm biased, but Super Corridor won the race that everybody's pointing for when they have a nice juvenile filly. Like it's as if like, say we won the Kentucky Oaks next year and didn't like have a, grade 1 win beyond that. And somebody wants to give it to a horse that won a sprint stake on the same day as the Kentucky Oaks. I don't know if I would be down with that. But anyway, it was obviously
Joe, continue that conversation, because I think it's a legitimate one, and the ballots are going to be going out, in about a month or so. So it's certainly worth talking about. But when we had Jaywalk, and Jaywalk won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, the exact same race that Super Corredora won. There was a filly that came in from Europe whose name now escapes me, and I'm sorry.
Newspaper of Record.
The Newspaper of Record. Thank you. Yep. Yes. Who had credentials out the wazoo over in Europe, came here and won the turf race, not the sprint, but the actual juvenile turf. And there were conversations and discussions back then about, well, what should it be, who should win, and everything like that. And at the end of the day, Jaywalk won in kind of a landslide as far as the voting goes. And the way it was explained to me by some of the voters is that it's the 3 Ds that make a difference when it comes to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile voting. It's distance, dirt, and the United States. And basically that's more important than speed and turf. And it may not even be in that order, but they put a premium, as our industry does, quite frankly, on 2 turns, dirt, and things that go on here in the States. God damn it, it's America. God damn it, and you better win here. And that's not to say that Sci-Fair isn't a very good filly, because she is daughter of Not This Time. And she was 3 for 4 and lost in a photo in that 4th race. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, I think what you were saying, which is I'd rather have a horse that I know is going to be going for the classic races and the classic distances, and vote accordingly. Now, it's supposed to be a snapshot of where they are. Well, if you polled 9 out of 10 people in the industry and made them lay hand on a Bible and say that I swear on my kids' who would I rather have? I think the majority of them would rather have the gun runner that can run 2 turns rather than the turf sprinter, who is going to be a phenomenal turf sprinter and is a grade 1 winner in her own rights. But just remember the 3 Ds when it comes down to the voting: distance, dirt, and the United States.
I like that. I never heard that, but that's awesome. I mean, in fairness, Jaywalk did have the other grade 1 win on her resume, so she had a slightly more beefed up resume. And I mean, the only thing I would say is that, the turf sprint is the same distance as a 5 furlong breeze. Like, it is just inherently harder to run 2 turns, especially on dirt. And I do think that should factor in. Like, what was the taller task, running the same distance that you ran in a workout in the morning, or going 2 turns on dirt, and not to mention setting a super fast pace. So it's all in good fun. Like, I expect the TaylorMade team and the Medallion team to, go to bat for their filly, and she is a really nice filly, and I'm going to continue in the spirit of Dale Romans' Senate run, stumping for Super Corredora as we get closer to the Eclipse Award. So I hope to see you there, buddy. I wanted to get your take on the vet scratch controversy, because Nick and I talked about it, and Christina and I talked about it at the week after the show. After the Breeders' Cup, rather, but it really has not gone away. David and Gordo had a Q&A in the TDN this week where he kind of expounded on it. And it's an interesting read, because he is part of like the HISA ADMC committee that's in charge of making these rules. And just to be clear, like, HISA did not scratch these horses at the Breeders' Cup. Like, I see a lot of misinformation on Twitter, shocking, that everyone's like, oh, HISA's out of control, all these scratches at the Breeders'. HISA has nothing to do with that shit. That is the Breeders' Cup and the Del Mar veterinarians who were working on that. And my take when we talked about it a couple weeks ago was that, if you're going to throw around all these conspiracy theories, you better have some evidence to back it up. Because the idea, like, unless they are so concerned about Bob Baffert winning the fucking dirt mile, why would anybody have any reason to scratch these horses? It's not good for anybody. It's not good for handle. It's not good for the attention on these horses. It's not good just in general as the amount of vet scratches. And I'm not saying that this is something I believe, but it could give off the impression that people are trying to run hurt horses in the Breeders' Cup, the more vet scratches there are. So it's not good for perception. It's not good for handle. It's not good for the betting, for the entertainment level, entertainment product. Like, I'm stunned that so many people decide to go down the conspiracy rabbit hole about this. But you tell me what you think, John.
Well, it doesn't surprise me that people go down the conspiracy rabbit hole, because people love that shit. They love to drum up the idea that everything's against the man, and that poor fill in the blank doesn't have a chance because government coming in and telling them what they can and can't do, and you can't take my horses out of a race, and you can't take my guns, blah blah blah. Anyway, that's a whole different.
Well, it's the same vein. It really is in the same vein.
But I actually sat on a call for an hour and 20 minutes on a HISA call, and Dr. Jeff Blea came out, and he's in charge of the protocols on when it comes to the vet work, and he explained it so a 5-year-old like me could understand it. Okay. And just bear with me a second while I go through this, because I need to set the stage a little bit when it comes to the Breeders' Cup and the whole week-long process that goes on to decide whether or not horses are sound enough to run. And Dr. Blea kept saying it is not foolproof. It is something that we're always tinkering with, and we're dealing with athletes, and they're trying to perform. So yeah, there were a couple of horses actually that ran that were sound, jumped through all the hoops and all the reviews, and didn't finish their respective races. And that's a difficult thing, but they're trying to make sure that horses are sound enough to be able to run. And here's the protocol that I didn't even know, Joe, the full extent of it. But here's a protocol that a Breeders' Cup entrant has to go through. Number one, there are 3 groups of vets, 25 in total. 19 of the vets are employed by the Breeders' Cup. Then there are domestic veterinarians known as regulatory vets. And then in this case, the CHRB also has vets on track to review and watch all the horses. The attending vet on each horse reviews the entry prior to entries, meaning they watch races, they watch the horses, warm up, work out, and everything. and basically green light that this horse should be okay to enter into a race. Every morning, the horse has to jog in front of veterinarians, different teams of veterinarians, to ensure their safety and that they are sound. When the horses go around the racetracks, they not only have in their saddle towels biometric uh, markers to make sure that horses are free and clear and using themselves properly. And those that information is reviewed. But there's a veterinarian at the 7/8 pole and at the 3/8 pole, and they are videotaping the horses as they go by, and they're watching live, and they're also watching in slow-mo on the videos. There's at least one stall review exam during the window from the time the horses are entered on that Monday until they run on that Friday or Saturday. A new protocol this year was that they actually put stethoscopes on the horse and listen to their heart rate, listening for arrhythmias and or murmurs. And if they feel like there's something irregular, then they could go to an EKG imaging scenario if they want to. But that's not that hadn't happened this year. But that was a new protocol this year because they want to make sure that other than the eyeball tests and everything we're talking about, Joe, they want to make sure that internally there's nothing going on that because of pulmonary issues that a horse could happen. Then one day before the race, a Breeders Cup vet, a regulatory vet, and a CHRB vet in a team all review the horse and go through all the pre-race protocols to ensure there's a problem. The vets they all meet and compare notes on a daily basis. So that way, if somebody's looking at nitrogen one day and then looking at Super Corredora the next day, they're comparing notes with the vets that are watching, all those horses to ensure that there's no inconsistencies. Or, hey, this horse is a little bit off, but that's its natural gait. I hope you recognize that. And they do communicate with the trainer and with whomever the trainer has employed as their regular vet at home to go over and make sure that they're not missing anything. All that information is shared with the trainer, and all of those notes are put into the Compass program so all the veterinarians can have a chance to review accordingly. And then they get to the post parade, Joe, when they actually have a jockey on their back. And that is the final review for soundness. And that's really important because at that point in time, the track vet has all the authority to make a decision. It's not the stewards. It's not any of the other vets that watch the horse for the entire weekend, but all this information has been given to the track vet in advance. So that way, if they see that there's any inconsistencies or irregularities, or the horse just doesn't look right, they have the final and full authority and decision-making to scratch the horse at that point in time. Okay. And the regulatory vets at that point in time are not diagnosing what the problem is. They're just deciding about whether or not they should scratch the horse. So I think that people are also getting kind of up in arms because they're like, oh, what does the regulatory vet know if so-and-so has a hot foot or is off behind or whatever it is? They should, that's not their role. Their role is basically to look at the horse one last time while there's a jockey on their back, while they're in the throes of the post parade, to make that final decision. So there's so many data points and so many pieces of information that go into this. And a lot of it is to make sure the horse is sound, but also a lot of it is CYA to make sure it's like, hey, maybe I had a bad day when I looked at nitrogen that morning. And here are my notes. And if it's inconsistent with the other 9 or 10 times that the horse was reviewed by different veterinarians, then maybe that's on me. So that way it's kind of a safety net to make sure that it's not like, hey, I didn't have my coffee this morning and I don't like the trainer. So I'm automatically in the back of my mind not going to like the way that his horse is warming up. There are so many levels and layers and protocols. And like I said, I just delineated down all the information in a 3-minute review that took an hour and 20 minutes to review with photos and videos and so on. But I can't thank Dr. Blia enough for walking me and us as a group through the process, so that we even understanding of it. Do I like it when my horse gets scratched? I just had a horse this week in New York got scratched. Was I happy about it? No, I was pissed, because the whole time I'm going back through my vet notes, and my bills, looking to see if there was anything that should have been a problem. And you know what it was, Joe? It was because the horse kicked the stall and its shoe moved, and because of that, the nails were hitting a nerve in its foot, and therefore the horse was off. So, was it a catastrophic situation? No. But you know what? I don't want my athlete to run unless he's 100%. And I appreciate, after I get over the fact that I'm annoyed because we got scratched, I appreciate the fact that they're looking out for the betterment and of my horse.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's their job. Like, people got to stop with they have an agenda against this trainer or that. You have no evidence. You have no evidence at all for any of that. So stop with the nonsense. Like, I'm going to read some of the stats that Dr. Blee gave in one of these meetings where he's talking about the vet scratches, particularly in California. Says there were 23 horses scratched in the post parade last year in California. It took an average of 108 days for those horses to return to the races, whereas it took their cohorts an average of 39 days. So nearly 3 times as long to come back to the races if they're a vet scratch in the post parade. In fact, nearly half of those scratch have not even returned to the races at all. Of the 803 claims in California last fiscal year, 109 or 13% were voided post-race. Of those 109, nearly half have failed to return to the races. And the other half took an average of 148 days to return to racing, compared to the 28 days that it took 95% of their cohorts to return to racing. So the data is absolutely clear. And this is the case in New York, too. Jennifer Durenberger did a presentation on this recently on the voided claims in New York. Like, it is undeniable that vet scratches, more often than not, will find issues that are not necessarily detectable to the naked eye. And this is their job. This is their job, is to make sure that we're doing every single thing possible we can to avoid breakdowns. Because I saw one at Del Mar on Thursday on the undercard, and it was horrific. And it was honestly one of the worst I've ever seen. It was on a turf course. I think it was like the 5th race, and it was absolutely brutal. And anybody that's ever seen one does not ever want to see one ever again. And I'm just so tired of the selfishness and the myopia from people who are pissed off that their horse got scratched and they're suing and this and that. Yeah, maybe in this instance they got it wrong. Maybe. But chances are overall they're going to get it right. Like, look at Grande. When Grande got scratched from the Derby earlier this year, and has he raced since? Have you seen Grande since? And this was someone that Mike and Todd Pletcher swore up and down was sound. And I'm not saying that they were trying to run a herd horse. Right. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the regulatory vet, the vet who is ultimately in charge of that horse either running or not running that day, is another layer of defense to something that you might not see if you think that your horse is sound from watching them gallop and watching them breeze and then watching them cool out. It sucks. It sucks to have a horse scratch, especially from a big race. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, do you want to go back to 2019 when horses were breaking down left and right, and the cover of the Washington Post and every major newspaper was about all these horses dying? Because that's the alternative. If we relax the regulatory vet standards in this sport, that's what we're going back to. And all the people that, were rightfully at that time saying the sky was falling, a lot of them are the same people now who are saying, oh, it's overreach by the veterinarians and this and that. And I just, there's so much selfishness in this game. And I just wish that, you be pissed off on that day. Be like, oh, well, everything the horse was showing us was that he was sound. Be pissed off on that day. But if you can take a step back the next day or a couple of days later and say, hey, it didn't work out for us. We think the horse was sound. But at the end of the day, this is for the betterment of the sport. That would go a long way in terms of providing the support for the vets that they need right now, because it's a hard enough job as it is.
Terrible job.
And they don't need people sniping at them on fucking Twitter and yelling at them on the phone or at the barn and this and that. Like, again, like, can we take a breath? Can we take a step back? And I say this, like John, West Point has had several horses scratch from major races that we would have told you the morning of the race was sound, but you gotta walk the walk. You can't just talk the talk. You can't just say you're all in favor of safety and it's the number one priority until a vet scratches my horse. Then it's all this overreach and we got to upend the system. Rail Talk is sponsored by Epic Insurance Brokers, one of the nation's top retail insurance brokers, providing expertise across key lines of insurance like property and casualty, employee benefits, and unique specialty insurance. And another unique and special guy is Chris Moore, who leads Epic's equine specialty practice. You see him all over the place at the sales, at the races. He's got horses himself. He lives and breathes this sport. Part of the reason we love him so much. But he also is a good hang and knows the business, knows the insurance business inside and out. If you buy yearlings and have a nice group of horses and didn't review the ins and outs of your insurance program, you got to fix that ASAP. Give Chris a call. He'll get all that mess in order. Now's the time to review the meat and potatoes of your insurance program as well. Your farm, auto, workers' comp, the umbrella policies. That January 1st insurance renewal date is right around the corner. So give Chris a call. Is your mortality insurance guy different than your farm insurance guy? That could be a problem. Chris knows this inside and out. He knows all of the intricacies and the nuances of the insurance business. There's a reason that Epic and his team insure so many great horses, including so many of Jon Green and DJ Stable's horses. So shout out to Chris and the team. And that brings us to this week's
Epic Performance of the Week.
The Epic Performance of the Week. John, it's good to have you back for this. And this week's Epic Performance of the Week, it was a little bit of slim pickings. The racing calendar is really starting to wind down a little bit. But I want to give it to Shred the Gnar. Shred the Gnar, which John has told me is a snowboarding term. Again, Sean White over here obviously knew what that was off the top of his head. But yeah, very, very nice filly who had a lot of promise earlier this year. She had run 3 races. She was twice first by 6.5 and 7 lengths. And the other race she missed by a neck. Got going a little bit too late to get into like the Kentucky Oaks mix, but she was going to be a serious filly for the summer. Had to go on the shelf after that May 2nd allowance race. Came back on Saturday in the Grade 3 Chaluki Stakes at Churchill and crushed him and was much the best. Not even the favorite, as John mentioned. Ragtime was in there, one Magic Filly. It was a decent little field, but man, she looked good, John. And we're looking for like really good 4-year-old fillies next year. I mean, we're not. The nitrogen people are not. But in general, for racing with Torpedo Anna, like I think that there's kind of a gap in that older filly and mare division, and maybe this is one of them for next year.
It very well could be. It was nice to see her coming off the layoff. It was a 6-month layoff, Joe, and she beat the older fillies and mares, so she's already taken that next step against older horses. But put in another Grade 3, $610,000 yearling purchase by Flying Dutchman and Brian Lynch, and just comes from an absolute stout female family out of a Bernardini mare. Zenith is the second dam, who was campaigned very successfully by John Service, multiple graded stake-winning filly there. And Shred the Gnar is a name and a saying that you'll be hearing a lot about in 2026.
Rail Talk is sponsored by the Green Group, the number one accounting firm in the horse business. Shout out to Len and the whole team for all the success on the racetrack and in the sales ring this year. Green Group is the number one accounting firm in the horse business because no other CPA firm knows the horse industry like they do. Len and DJ Stable obviously have a huge footprint all across the industry, and the Green Group has close to 1,000 clients in the horse business because they make them money and save them taxes. As always, special offer for listeners of Rail Talk. Complimentary, confidential, half-hour consultation in it for you. If you call that number, what's that number, Michael?
732-634-5100. Green Group.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Or you can go to greenco.com. But you don't have to take it from me and the rest of the Rail Talk family. You can take it from an extended member of the Rail Talk family, Samantha Perry, another valued Green Group client.
Len Green of the Green Group is one of the greatest guys that I know in this industry. He's so kind, he's funny, but don't tell him I said that because he'll get his ego too big. But I trust him so much with anything horse related and especially tax related.
Shout out to Sam. It was great seeing you. I saw her in the champagne toast room after we won with Super Corredora. And as if I weren't happy enough to see Sam's smiling face made me even happier. Gave her a great big old hug. And John, she was on the flight with you, right?
She was. She took your seat, Joe. Actually, quite frankly, she took your seat, and we couldn't be happier. It was great. We had a wonderful time. But I didn't know that she snuck into the champagne room. That's pretty cool.
She was there all day, supposedly. I'm like, that's a fun place to be. You see the happiest people possible.
Oh, she was in the champagne room the whole day?
Yes, that's what she told me. It's not just because she wanted the champagne, because I think she just loves being around happy people, and she's obviously part of the family, and the Green Group is part of the family, and we couldn't be happier and more appreciative for the support of Len and the whole team throughout this entire year. It's really excited for you guys to have the Eclipse champion coming up, knock on wood, and Nitrogen, and just appreciate everything you guys do, not just for us, for people all across the industry. So go to greenco.com or call them up at 732-634-5100. Learn about all the benefits from working with the Green Group. So HISA has proposed some changes to the anti-doping and medication control rules over the past week or so, and HISA is seeking public comment on these changes. Now you can go to the HISA website. You can read the press release that's been sent to all the news organizations to get to the nitty gritty of what's being changed. Includes the introduction of transfer testing. It'll allow a prospective owner or trainer of a horse to request the testing of a sample for a limited scope of substances. Creation of a Class D controlled medication category for certain medications. Reducing first-time penalties from a fine to a reprimand with no disqualification. Reduce sanctions for controlled medication violations resulting from vets list samples. Ability for people to request DNA testing for samples reported as adverse analytical findings. Opportunity for reduced sanctions for the responsible person for findings from a finite list of human substances of abuse. That's something that's been a topic of discussion in the past. So there's several more, but HISA is requesting comment, and this is something that is required from their relationship, their arrangement with the FTC. There's a public comment period before any of these rules get approved by the FTC. So you have until January 5th to make your voice heard. And if you have any issues or any comments or anything that can make these rules better, you should speak up. And I know, John, this is a pet peeve of yours. People not making their voices heard and then complaining later on.
Well, this is your opportunity. This is the opportunity to do a couple of things. Number one is to review the proposed modifications of a series of rules. Number two is to understand the process of why these modifications are being put into place, that these modifications were reviewed and discussed by horsemen's groups, and HISA representatives went around to a lot of the major racetracks and had meet and greets and open-ended discussions with trainers and veterinarians and owners in those respective jurisdictions. Some in the big racetracks, some in the smaller racetracks that get, affected more from a financial standpoint. And all those comments and discussions, helped shape and form the new rules that are being proposed for modification on some of the drugs and regulations you mentioned. Joe, to me, this is, a constant process of being tweaked and up, and improved and changed, much like a lot of regulations should be, where they're being changed with the times. They're being changed based on what they can see is working and is not working, what science is bringing to the equation and how that should modify some of these rules. But at the end of the day, this should, for no other reason, shut people up about whether or not after the fact they said, oh, we were never involved. Oh, we never had a say in things. Oh, how come, Big Brother is doing this and we don't? You know what? You have a window now from now until January 5th to review all the rules, all the modifications, and make comments and submit that insight, because a lot of it may be good. I know when they did the tour, they got a lot of feedback and they appreciated it to help kind of craft and tweak some of the modifications they had. If you don't have the ability to sit and read the rules and regulations and modifications that are being proposed, I understand. Well, then what you should do, here's another opportunity for you. is you can attend or listen to the postscript of the University of Arizona Symposium, where Heiza Haiwu is going to be talking about these rules and modifications during a 2-hour panel. And if you don't have the time or the intellect to be able to understand it all, and I don't, I had to have a lot of this spoon fed to me and explained to me, then at least if you listen to the symposium and get an idea of what the changes are, and then you read the summary that is in the press release or that is being published by a lot of the major institutional, articles, then you have the ability still, you have 3 weeks from that point to be able to comment and send your thoughts and changes in. And we will put up on the screen, you should make any changes and comments to the HISA Assistant General Counsel, Sam Reinhardt, at samuel.reinhardt@hisaus.org. That's samuel.reinhardt@hisaus.org. No later than January 5th. So now is your opportunity. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Yeah, no, I mean it's true. Like you gotta be part of the solution. Otherwise, you're part of the problem. And this is something, like I said, the FTC's regulations require that there is a public comment period, and it works sometimes. Like I remember when there was the proposed rule for changing the tax reporting rules for wagers, and there was a public comment period, and thousands of people, including myself, wrote comments about like the onerous tax reporting rules that are costing people money every single year in a game that's already hard enough to bet and make a profit at. And I remember the FTC chair saying at the time when they adopted the new rules, saying this was very, very helpful in helping us understand kind of at a nuanced, granular level this rule, how it affects people. So the people at the FTC, like they're not experts in horse racing or medication control or any of that stuff. So if you can explain it to them and there's a reason that you think the rules should be changed, you got a good chance of making some actual adjustments. And that's, obviously what we're looking for here. We're looking for collaboration because we've seen the rules get adjusted, like the metformin reporting thresholds just changed recently. And that's big news. And obviously I think some people think that there were too many people that got caught up in that over the last year or so. So that's something that's, changed with public feedback. So it's, this thing it's a changing organism. And you have to contribute to it if you want it to look the way that you want to look, instead of just, throwing the baby out with the bathwater, which is what a lot of people do. But I think we're too far down that road. I wanted to mention real quick. Go ahead, John.
I was going to say, Joe, I don't know if you're going to talk about the David and Gordo Q&A on the TDN, if that's what
I mentioned it earlier, but you can.
So I mean that's worth a read. That's definitely worth a read because David brings up a lot of good points, and unfortunately you can't comment to the TDN about it, but you can comment to HISA if you want to incorporate any of the things that David recommends, or you're against some of the things that David recommends. But be that as it may, I think it's worth the read to get a better understanding of like what went in behind the scenes in the process and why they made certain changes and why they're using penalty points for controlled medications, almost like driving infractions. Where you get points as opposed to just immediately you're suspended. And I think that if nothing else, this is your opportunity and your window to have your voice heard. And if you say something and it doesn't get incorporated, then you have a beef. Then I get it. But like you said, if you say nothing and then you have a beef, shame on you. I'm not listening to your nonsense anymore.
Yeah. No, this is the time. This is the time to make changes and to affect change if that's what you want to do. All right, I want to mention real quick the Claiming Crown was Saturday at Churchill Downs, one of our favorite days in racing. Double Your Money won the Claiming Crown Jewel, $225,000 purse. Jose Ortiz and Irad Ortiz combined for 5 wins. Luis Saez also had 2. So, not to brag on the New York Jockey Colony, but it seems every time these guys ship anywhere, they dominate the racing, even in a place like Kentucky. So shout out to the Ortiz boys and Luis Saez for getting it done. And I also want to give a shout out to Toba for putting this on. And, it's something that is sorely needed in racing, because there are so many horses like this that can run fast figures and win big races. and they run out of conditions a lot of times. If you can't find a starter allowance for them, you got to risk them for a tag, and you end up losing a horse that's been really good to you and that still has a lot of gas in the tank on the racetrack. So I would love to see more of these kind of events, and I think it kind of dovetails with the potential introduction or the gradual introduction of the rating system that they're starting to do. They're going to start to do at certain racetracks in California, where you have a place for your horse to run who still can run, is probably not an allowance level horse, but has some good races in them, and you don't want to lose them for the tag. So I think that the Claiming Crown has obviously served a really big purpose for those kind of horses, like the meat and potatoes horses who fill our races day to day in the sport, and otherwise probably would be in for a tag somewhere. And I hope that's, I hope that we can find more spots for these horses. Horses don't change hands as often. Right. And, you have one trainer who knows the horse, knows how to get them to their good race, and isn't worried about someone else taking them from them. So shout out to Toba and everybody at the Claiming Crown, because we love it. Don't we, John?
Yeah, no, I mean, and what a phenomenal opportunity to run these horses at a major venue like Churchill Downs. There were a number of people who were being interviewed post Winter Circle, and that was one of the things that they said. The guy from New York cracked me up from Staten Island. He said, I'm a kid from Staten Island, and I'm standing here the same place where they run the Kentucky Derby, and I'm in the same Winter Circle. And it was just really cool. I mean, we don't have a lot of claimers. We used to, that was our bread and butter for decades, was to be in the claiming ranks, and the Claiming Crown was always something that was on our radar, as far as, hey, this is going to be our chance to score. This is the kind of race that we want to have a horse running in. And Joe, I think all but one of the races overfilled. I mean, that's how popular these races are by the entrance. So I think the venue is perfect, and this is not a deterrent to the other venues that were there, but to have it at Churchill Downs, it's iconic. It's a feel-good story. I think that not only did the Toba do a really good job, but I think National Thoroughbred groups did a really, really phenomenal job of marketing it. Shout out to Eric Hamelback and his group as well for publicizing this. And we forget, because we primarily talk about these graded stake races that come across, because those are really the needle movers in a lot of different parts of the industry. But 90-something% of races are non-black type. So you have, like you said, it's the meat and potatoes. It's the races that make the card go, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday or even a Saturday. We need to have these horses as part of it. They need to be able to have a safe haven to be able to run and not change hands as often as they do, and really give them an opportunity to run for a ton of money. In comparison to maybe some of the races that they'd normally run in. But it's just a really good feel-good story. I think they've got it to the point where it's hitting on all cylinders, thanks to all the different organizations that are behind it. And it was really fun to watch. And again, I'm not a wagerer, I'm not a gambler like you are, but I mean, to have full fields in all these races is like unheard of, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a big part of it. Like, if you didn't have this event, a lot of these horses would be scattered across other races, across other jurisdictions, and end up probably in some 6 and 7 horse fields. Instead, they come together and they battle in 12 horse fields. Like, yeah, it's a great wagering event too. So shout out to the Claiming Crown and everybody who puts it on. One other thing I want to mention. We're going to talk to Dale in a little bit. Dale Romans has announced that he's going to run for Mitch McConnell's open Senate seat in Kentucky in 2026. He's going to run as a Democrat. There's going to be a lot of people throwing their hat in the ring. Amy McGrath, who ran unsuccessfully against McConnell, God, how long ago was that? 8 years ago, is going to run as well. Andy Barr on the Republican side, who's like a local legislature in Kentucky. And, some people had the criticism like, well, Dale has never run for office or anything. Why would he jump straight to Senate? Well, he has been in a position of leadership with the Kentucky HBPA, and he has been behind the scenes working to help get more immigration visas for Kentucky. He's been to Washington a bunch of times. He's worked with a lot of Kentucky legislatures on that issue as well. So, and the other thing too is, like, in the world of Trump, you don't get to gatekeep anymore who can run for office. The guy was he was the host of The Apprentice, and now is the president. So you don't get to tell me that like, oh, so-and-so can't run for this because they've never held public office before. It's time. If you have an idea, if you have a reason, you get a motivation for running, it's time to shoot your shot. Especially on the Democratic side, we need new leadership in that party. And I think he's going to have a fine line to try to straddle in Kentucky as a quote unquote independent Democrat, because it still is a very red state, but it has a Democratic governor who Dale is very close with and is very, very popular. And I think that him humanizing the immigration issue hits home for me so much. You've heard me rant about this on the show, and it's not just about the humanitarian thing. It really is an economic argument to make, especially in this industry, which is so dependent on immigrant labor. It really would help to have a person who is an immigrant advocate and an advocate for racing in one of 100 Senate seats in the country. So that's my take. John, what was your reaction to Dale's announcement?
Well, I think you have to look at it a couple different ways. I don't know what an independent Democrat is, but I'm sure he's going to tell us. I'm sure we'll be finding out exactly what it is. But I think in general, it's good for Kentucky to have a racing representative in politics. And I know, not that I'm comparing Dale to Governor Brereton Jones in any way, shape, or form, but it was good for Kentucky when Brereton was governor, and it helped the industry along. It gave representation. It's arguably the second or third largest industry in Kentucky, with bourbon, and some would say Kentucky basketball, but basically, those exports are so important and so impactful on the Commonwealth's economy that it's a good thing for somebody from racing to be willing to pick up the mantle and have our voices heard, in DC. So, I'm curious. I'm going to be interested to get into the weeds a little bit with Dale on some of the topics and some of the talking points, that affect our industry and also Kentucky in general. But I think anytime somebody wants to step up and be a part of the process and make a difference, as opposed to lobbing, Molotov cocktails from the sideline and not adding anything to the equation, I think is always a positive thing.
Yeah, and like you said, it's crucial to have an advocate for racing. People forget, anti-HISA people don't listen to this part right now. People forget that HISA would not have come into being and passed into law without Mitch McConnell jamming it into an omnibus bill at the end of the year, in whatever year that was, 2019. So it especially in that seat is so consequential, especially if you can flip it from red to blue. You're going to have a lot of people knocking on your door, looking for favors and looking out for this and that. But if one of his chief goals is to protect racing, and I can't imagine it won't be, that's enormous. And that alone, I think, should give you reason to support him in this race. And yeah, I think it's more of a natural step up than I think most people would believe just looking at it from the outside. I think Dale's been working on a lot of political issues from behind the scenes for a while, and it's going to be a wide open race. But Amy McGrath had her shot, man. How much money did she get to try to beat Mitch McConnell? She got 9 figures in that race and lost by 20 points. So I think it's time, not just for Dale, but for across the country, for some new shooters in the Democratic Party, because the old leadership ain't cutting it. Rail Talk is sponsored by Facing Tipton. Shout out to Facing Tipton and the November sale. The Night of the Stars did not disappoint. Mentioned Streak of Luck sold for $6.2 million to top the November sale. The sales total exceeded $100 million for the 4th time in the past 5 years. Real quick, we got the digital sale coming up December 4th through the 9th. And then, after that, we turn the page to the 2026 calendar. But I want to hear from John. He was there on the ground for the Night of the Stars. Give us your reaction.
Yeah, Joe. Again, it was an event that you had to attend. It was must see. The positivity was palpable, and it shifted a little bit. I think that Fasig recognized that previously the mares were the ones that were the focal point and bringing all the money and all the attention. And the weanlings, I don't want to say they were kind of an afterthought, but they certainly weren't as well received. Well, this year it was almost the opposite. The weanlings were flying off the shelves. People couldn't get enough of them, and in a precursor to the other weanling sales, there was a reason why. It's because yearlings were so freaking expensive that people were like, "Well, I better step back and buy some weanlings." And I think the weanling market for that sale, or year to year, was over 30%. The averages and the medians were up over 30%. So Fasig-Tipton recognized that they needed to showcase the weanlings a little bit more, and they did, and then some. And then Joe, we didn't even mention, like, She's So Spicy went through and brought over $5 million. One partner buying the other one out, and then Puka brought a final bid of $5.1 million and is changing hands as well. So there were some fireworks early with the weanlings, fireworks late with some of those big price tag mares, and everywhere in between, people were slapping hands and hooting and hollering and really enjoying the kickoff of the breeding stock season. And Joe, I have an announcement. Fasig-Tipton,
that's my drum roll,
is going to be selling another one of our racehorses at the digital sale. Yay!
Oh, cool. Who's selling?
Joe, I'm glad you asked. It is our Candy Ride colt, Gelato, who just ran second up in Woodbine. He is Kentucky bred and is eligible for the full amount of purses at Turfway Park.
So that digital sale is, we've seen the success of the digital sales all year. There's one more chance to get that turnkey horse for 2026. The sale goes December 4th through the 9th. You can enter now at digital.fasig-tipton.com. So we're so thrilled to bring this next guest to the Rail Talk studio. He's a champion trainer, and now he is running for Senate as a Democrat in Kentucky. What were you thinking, Dale? Dale Romans, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. I think this is the first time I've been on with you guys.
Yeah. No, it's surprising because I run into you and cross paths with you so much. I'm so glad that you're on and so glad that you're running because, this is obviously a wide open race with Mitch McConnell stepping down. Can you just talk a little bit about, why did you jump straight to Senate? Because I think a lot of people think, oh, well, he didn't run for anything before, but you've had leadership positions in the industry. What made you choose this race?
Well, because it's an open seat, anybody can win. I was never going to run against Mitch McConnell. No one was ever going to unseat him. And, politics has always been a big part of my life behind the scenes, supporting politicians in Kentucky, going to Frankfurt to work on horse-related issues. I've been on Capitol Hill 4 times in the last 2 years working on things that are related to horse racing, and I've always liked politics, and I'm too old to start at a state house seat and try to work my way up. So, and I think I could get a lot done, and it's a good spot in my life. My kids are grown, and I'm in a good place, and I just think that I could go to Washington and do a lot of good stuff for Kentucky and for the country.
And Dale, how difficult is it? You're not. It's not unusual for you to be running long shots and winning. How difficult is it going to be an independent Democrat running in a red state?
Everybody says that a Democrat can't win in Kentucky, but I'm a very centrist Democrat. That's why I keep calling myself independent Democrat, because if you win from Kentucky, it brings a lot of power for Kentucky to Washington, because you don't have to vote with the party. You can vote for what's right for Kentucky, but you're not a puppet to the president. And it's Joe Manchin type of thing, what he did in West Virginia. West Virginia is more red than Kentucky. And he went up there, I think was one of the most popular senators on Capitol Hill, because he always did what he thought was right. He wasn't anybody's puppet at either side. And I'd like to go up and do the same thing. And when they say a Democrat can't win in Kentucky, we had 2 institutions on Capitol Hill for 30 years apiece, in Jim Bunning and Mitch McConnell. No one was going to beat them. And then I don't know that our candidate was as strong as we needed against Rand Paul. He came in with a lot of money, name recognition. So there hasn't been a whole lot of opportunity for someone to win. And we did vote in the last 2 terms a Democrat governor who's done a great job and is very popular in the state of Kentucky. He's one of the guys I want to use as a role model when I go to Washington.
Yeah, well, that's a good lead into my next question. Andy Beshear is who you're referring to. He is super popular as a Democrat in a red state. Like, how do you think that he's done that? And is there any lessons or, kind of knowledge that you've gained from him and watching him?
Yeah, he did just what we're talking about. He's a very centered Democrat, and he's worked for both sides. He hasn't let politics get in the way of what he does in Frankfurt. And I think that's pretty obvious. But you look at the jobs he's brought into the state and the way he handled a lot of the tragedies we had. You know, we had a lot of problems with floods and tornadoes and stuff in Kentucky. We've done a really good job of maneuvering through those things. And I think that he just put Kentucky first, way ahead of politics.
And Dale, what do you think are the 2 or 3 most important, items going on right now in Kentucky, whether they're horse related or not?
Well, it's definitely economy, healthcare. I mean, for the entire state of Kentucky, those would be your 2 biggest things. I think education, that we could bring education in the 21st century. You know, I was diagnosed severely dyslexic in 2nd grade and had a really hard time with traditional learning. I don't think you have to educate kids that had the problems I had that way anymore. I think there's a lot of things in education that could be changed to put knowledge in someone's brain. At the end of the day, that's what we want to do. I mean, I couldn't read a book or write a book report, but I could have watched documentary videos and told you word for word what went on in there, and really gotten a good education. There are those types of things. Medicaid cuts are going to be a problem. The tariffs are a problem for Kentucky. I mean, they're crushing our bourbon industry, as everybody can see. And those things need to be worked on for Kentucky.
You know, one of your key platform planks, I think, is going to be immigration. That's one of the things that you've been working on behind the scenes on behalf of racing. Now it's going to be on behalf of a broader population. And, can you speak to the humanitarian factor of it? Because I know the economic argument is a strong one, and people like ignore it at their own peril. But you've done a lot of advocacy on behalf of the immigrant community in racing. Like, I think it's because you actually want to look out for them. But I also imagine it's a result of you having worked so closely with them over the years. What impressions have those experiences working so close with the immigrant community had on you and what you want to do?
Well, first of all, business needs the immigrant workforce. Our business and other businesses, agriculture, hospitality, construction, they all are dependent on that immigrant workforce. These are jobs that Americans don't have to do. They're not what you call high quality jobs. They're intensive labor, bad hours, and there's too much opportunity in this country. And on the humanitarian side, I hate seeing the people that I know who work on the backside that are an immigrant workforce working on visas lumped in with criminals, murderers, drug dealers that we keep hearing about. I mean, that's such a small percentage of the immigrants that are in this country. Our country was built with an immigrant labor force, and we continue to need it today. And the other thing is the Democrats keep talking about a path to citizenship. I think if I go on the backside and talk to 99% of the immigrant workforce, they're not worrying about having a path to citizenship. They want a work permit, and that's what we want to try to get done, is just get a work permit if you're sponsored by an employer, and that you get a background check and you're not a criminal and you're going to pay your taxes, you can be a productive member of the United States, then you're welcome in this country. And we need you here. And we need to pull the bad. If we pull all the good out of the shadows, then what's left and can't follow through that process, can't get sponsored, can't pass a vet, then we need to collect those people and send them out of this country. Well, you can't take 11 million people out of the workforce of this country and just send them home. You want to talk about rising costs and affordability. Let's get rid of the labor force and see what happens.
Right.
So we need to be pragmatic about this thing. You don't deport, document.
Yep. And Dale, I think it's human nature where when we achieve something, we want to try for the next thing. When we win a claiming race, we want to win allowance races. When we win allowance races, we want to win stakes, and then all the way up to the classics. Let's fast forward. You win and become senator. At that point in time, are you looking to aspire to other things, or you want to just represent the Commonwealth of Kentucky?
I'm just worried about the Commonwealth of Kentucky and our country. And, I think that we've been governed for too long now by the wings of each party, and we need to get people back in the center. And I know I'd just be one of 100, but let's try that first step. Let's try something different. I'm a unique candidate, in my opinion, in everybody's opinion. I'm every man in Kentucky, and that's what's supposed to be represented when you go to Washington, D.C. You don't need to be a career politician. I was raised by a single mother, basically raising 3 boys by herself, paycheck to paycheck, working at a union at the telephone company. And we didn't know we were poor, but we were dirt poor. And then I've gotten to be pretty successful in our signature industry here. And I've built a business. I've had a labor force working under me. I've created jobs. I understand the hardships of anyone starting a small business. A small business owner is a middle-class guy that's made a good job for himself. And that's basically what I've done. And you employ other people. That's where we need to really concentrate and build America from the middle out.
Yeah, But I'm curious, like if you are pretty well known in Kentucky, if that kind of factored into your decision at all, because I think at one point it was like, well, what does a celebrity know about running for office? But then you had Schwarzenegger as governor of California. Obviously, you got Trump as the president right now. I think it's gotten to a point where it's not a hindrance. Sometimes it's even a benefit. Did that factor in your decision at all? That you are pretty well known in Kentucky?
I've got a little name recognition in Louisville and Lexington, of course, and most of that was people that gamble too much, but it's
like me.
Yeah, like you guys. But yeah, there's still a lot of the state that will have no idea who I am. I've got to get out there and introduce myself and let them know. But you're right. Trump never held office. Schwarzenegger never held office. Was the governor of Minnesota that was a professional wrestler that went into Minnesota and did a good job. I mean, Capitol Hill is supposed to be for the common man that understands the hardships of people. It's not supposed to be for career politicians. And believe me, I won't be in there for a long time, but I want to be in there for quality time.
Yep. And the obvious question is, how are you going to be able to balance both? How are you going to be able to balance your duties to the Commonwealth and also to your employees and your owners and your horses?
Well, during the campaign, it's easy. I've just told all my guys, nothing starts till after 11. Everybody on the campaign trail, and most people have a job they have to report to. You got to pay your bills along the way. And horse racing is more than a job or a career for me. It's I've been going to barn 4 at Churchill Downs since I was 9 months old. My mother says first time she took me. I can't imagine not showing up there. So the campaign's easy. When we get to Washington, D.C., we'll figure it out. But, in saying that, Christina and Baltimore, my 2 main assistants, started with me 40 years ago. Tammy's been with me 35 years ago. Laura, that runs all the office, I met when I was 17 years old. This is a family business that we've all worked together for a long time, keeping this ship straight. And I think we can continue to do so.
Yeah. All right. Last question from me, and it's more of a general political question, because especially in a red state, I have to imagine you're not banking on flipping red voters to blue. I think your path is to get non-voters to vote. And I think that's a big sticking point for a lot of politicians, is like, how do I motivate the person to get off the couch and go out and vote? And I think with good reason, people are cynical at this point in terms of like the government gridlock and, what they've seen over the past 10 years in particular. How do you get those people to come out and vote? Maybe for the first time, how do you get them to participate when they think, it doesn't matter who I vote for, it all ends up being the same and I get screwed?
Well, I want to use the internet. I want to use social media. Griffin Johnson and my son are working with me for that part of it. I want to introduce myself to people and make them feel like there's a guy that I want to go register to vote for. You're right. You got to win all the Democrats. You got to win the independents. You got to get some new voters, new energy out there to understand that they're voting for something different. And I think we'll get a part of the Republican Party too. I've got a lot of Republican friends. In this business, we've got a lot of Republicans, and I keep running into them. A lot of them say, I've never donated to a Republican, never voted for a Republican, but you're one, or Democrat, but you're one I can. And then, that kind of fuels the fire. And I think that the Republican, 3 candidates running on the Republican side are pretty far right. So I think there's a big center of the Republican Party that will look at me and say, hey, we can work with this guy.
And with that point, if people want to contribute to the campaign, what's the best route for them?
Just go to DaleRomans.com and you can contribute. We'd appreciate it. It does take a lot of money. We were talking about before we came on air. It's kind of ridiculous the amount of money it takes for someone to run a campaign. But it's worthwhile. And I promise you, invest in me, I'll make it pay off for you when we get to Capitol Hill. And if you're a Republican, you don't have to be afraid to vote for me. There's not that much difference between us.
It's good to say that right at the end.
Yeah.
And also just having a racing advocate in the Senate is huge. As I mentioned earlier, Mitch McConnell helped get HISA put into place. So an advocate for our sport is not something that should be ignored as well, right, Dale?
That's right. I will always be an advocate for horse racing. Mitch did get HISA in place. Now I want to go in there and fix it. It's got a few tweaks it needs made to it. I mean, it was an unfunded mandate that I think that's going to put a lot of hardship on the smaller racetracks around this country that are as important as Churchill Downs and Keeneland. We need to keep that going. But my motto now is I'm not going up there and fight. You'll never hear me on the stump saying I want to go fight for you. I'm going up there and work for you, fight. I want to fight. I don't want to fight. I want to fix. And, with too much fighting going on, and I can work with anybody. I'll reach across the aisle, and I don't care who gets the credit. Let's just do some good stuff for Kentucky and for our country.
We'd love to have you in the Senate. Dale Romans, best of luck on your run, and it's always great talking to you, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, guys. Hopefully I'm on here a bunch between now and next November.
Let's do it.
Look forward to it. Thanks.
All right, so that's going to do it for episode 113 of Rail Talk. Excellent to have my buddy, my co-pilot, Jon Green, back. Great to see you, bud. Excellent show. Well done. Great to have you in good health and good spirits. And we're always grateful for our super production staff, our epic producer, our producer emeritus, Patty Wolf, who we love so dearly, as well as Julia Agresta and Nathan Wilkinson, who we could not do the show without. Shout out to you guys. Shout out to Dale Romans for stopping by. Wish him luck on his Senate bid. You can go to daleromans.com if you want to support. And thank you for watching and sticking with us. We'll be back next week with a very special guest on Monday, Everett Dobson, chairman of the Jockey Club, owner of the Oklahoma City Thunder. So a lot to talk to him about. We won't let Mike Rapoli in the room. Don't worry, Everett. But we're very much looking forward to that conversation. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next week back here on Rail Talk.